Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Jim Olson, Assistant Executive Director for the National Tile Contractors Association, and I want to thank you for attending today's webinar. The National Tile Contractors Association is excited to present the first technical webinar of 2021 titled Exterior Tile and Stone Installation. Our sponsor and presenter for this presentation is ARDEX Americas. Already growing in popularity before the COVID pandemic hit, now more than before, homeowners and commercial businesses like restaurants, entertainment venues are looking to expand their outdoor footprint to accommodate the new normal by providing a level of comfort from a safety viewpoint blended with the ambience of outdoors. North American architects and designers are following the European trends to seamlessly expand the interior design to the outdoor space. Porcelain tile and natural stone provides outstanding aesthetics and functionality for exterior spaces. This webinar will explore the issues and concerns professional installers face with exterior installations and some long-term successful solutions with minimized maintenance, risk, and callbacks. Now, before I introduce today's speaker, I need to remind you that during the webinar, you will be muted. Please use the questions area on your computer to type in your question, and we will answer your questions at the end of this presentation. If the audio on your computer is poor, call the number on the invite for this webinar to listen on your phone. All of our webinars are available to watch at any time on the NTCA YouTube channel. Shortly after our webinars are presented, they will be loaded and ready to go. Please go to the NTCA YouTube channel, subscribe, and you will be notified of all upcoming NTCA videos, including all technical webinars, giving you easier access to watch all current and past programs at your convenience. All right, here we go. Today's speaker, Mark Pennine, has been involved in the tile and stone industry for over 37 years. As a third-generation tile installer, Mark owned his own tile contracting business for 20 years. Mark has worked for ARDEX Americas for the past 10 years, most recently as the technical manager of the tile and stone installation systems. He has presented tile and stone installation products and procedures to contractors, architects, manufacturers, and distributors. Mark is active on many industry committees, including the ANSI ASC A108 Standards Committee, NTCA Technical Committee, MMSA, and the IICRC Substrate Committee. Welcome, Mark. Look forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Jim. Okay, so to avoid efflorescence and failures on exterior balconies, porches, and patios, you want to make sure your installation includes a capillary passive drainage system. Natural stone and porcelain pavers are popular choices for landscaping options, again, for patios, pool decks, sidewalks, and balconies. These installations will encompass porcelain as well as natural stone that are thicker than our traditional tile that we would install on the interior. These tiles and natural stones are typically from 2 cm, which is 3/4 of an inch, up to 7.62 cm, or 3 inches. Some popular options could include bluestone, quartzite pavers, as well as sandstone pavers. Porcelain pavers are made from clay, sand, and feldspar. Porcelain is a very strong and dense material. It resists scratches and has a very low water absorption of less than 0.5%. The low water absorption restricts the amount of water that may cause freeze-thaw issues, especially in the Northeast climates. COVID-19 has changed the way we use our homes. Today's homes are now our schools, offices, as well as family and entertainment spaces. Now more than ever, people are choosing to invest in outdoor spaces to increase the size and usable space for their current environments. The market is growing and is rapidly changing. We continue to expand into the outdoor living spaces. We're going to see an increase in the 2 cm porcelain natural stone pavers. Also, the large format tile is getting more common for exterior applications, not only for horizontal applications, but as well as vertical applications. There's a growing request for fast and proven installation systems. We're going to face some challenges. Most exterior tile and stone installation systems are inadequate and do not address many of the common challenges. Installation products and techniques vary by region and are not always suitable for harsh climates. There is limited education in the market that addresses these concerns. Let's take a look at traditional installation options. We have the thin bed method, which is using a direct bond with a thin set mortar. We also have a bonded mortar bed. This is a dry pack bonded to the substrate with a slurry bond coat in a typical thickness of approximately 3/4 of an inch up to 1.5 inches. We also have an unbonded mortar bed, which is a dry pack installed over a slip sheet or a cleavage membrane at a thickness of 1.5 inches up to 3 inches. We also have the last option, which is a dry set or a sand and gravel installation. The thin bed application, or the direct bond method, is for slabs that are on grade construction where no bending or deflection or stresses occur. A thin bed installation is desired for those type of applications. The substrate must be within tolerance and able to receive a cementitious adhesive. Anti-fracture as well as waterproofing membranes are optional, and a lot of times they're overlooked. You always want to incorporate your movement joints according to the TCA EJ 171. For a bonded mortar bed application, you want to use it where areas that you need to level, flatten, or contour. Again, a bonded mortar bed would go from thicknesses anywhere from 1/4 of an inch up to 2 inches in some cases. When floor flatness is critical, such as with pavers that have single wedges dimensions greater than 15 inches, a bonded mortar application is critical. Again, using an anti-fracture or waterproofing membrane is optional, but sometimes it should be considered to help the overall assembly of the installation. There's also an unbonded mortar bed application when you have to go for a thicker installation to hit a certain elevation. Those mortar bed thicknesses range from 1.5 inches up to 3 inches and sometimes thicker, depending upon the materials being used. It's used for leveling, flattening, and contouring You would use a slip sheet or a cleavage membrane to separate the mortar bed from the slab. It's completely unbonded from your existing substrate. Again, an anti-fracture or waterproofing membrane, a 11810 or 11812 product should be looked at when installing these type of stones outside over either a bonded or an unbonded mortar bed. So there's two types of mortar beds that we just talked about. And you can do them in a couple different applications. You have the float and set, where you would pull your dry pack or your mud, smooth and finish and let harden, and then come back later and install your stone or your tile. If you're using a porcelain paver or a stone that is very flat, engaged, this is a very common installation practice to use a float and cover application. A wet set or a live set is usually used when you're using a larger stone or an ungauged slate or another type of stone, where actually setting the stone into the wet live mud and beating it down to a certain level is required to get that floor or that finish flat and level. Also, you have the dry set method. Here are two examples of a dry set method. These are typically used for landscaping applications out in the yard, where you take either gravel and apply your paver right to the gravel, or you compact your gravel and put a layer of sand on top that you could screed off to a certain flatness and elevation, and then install your pavers. So when we're talking about exterior installations, we have to take in consideration expansion and contraction issues. So a screed can expand twice as much as a ceramic tile. So with a surface temperature changing dramatically from possibly having a nice sunny summer day and then a storm shows up and the rain comes down, you can have a dramatic difference in surface temperature in a short span of time. And what happens is your substrate, which includes your tile, as well as your mortar bed or your concrete substrate underneath, will contract as that substrate cools down. So you must have accommodations for movement joints in your installation to allow for these substrates to expand as well as contract. Most of us have seen the yardstick example of a substrate shrinking or contracting, causing the yardstick to rise up in the middle. Well, this is what exactly happens when a tile assembly shrinks as well. You will get tenting of your tile or stone and delamination. This is common for exterior applications. That's why you have to take the necessary installation practices as well as your soft joints and movement joints in your installation in consideration when you're planning out your exterior project. Older installations included smaller tiles that offered more joints to help with accommodate movement. However, the trend towards larger format tiles with less and smaller joints has increased in complexity of the exterior tile installations. Larger porcelain tiles equates to less joints, which means less expansion room, which increases the risk of cracking, heaving, and disbonding. When we look at other environmental effects on a tile assembly, we must also consider the combination of moisture and heat and how they affect or have a negative effect on a tile and stone application over time. So when it rains or even when it snows and the snow melts, that moisture is going to get into your grout joints, it's going to penetrate the assembly, and it's going to actually sit in the cement, the grout, the substrate, and unless there's a good drainage mat in place, that water is just going to sit there. Some of it will evaporate, but most of it's going to just stay there. And then what happens is when the sun comes out, it's going to basically cook that installation, causing that water to come to the surface and bring all the soluble salts with it, or efflorescence. Even when assembly has drains in it, if the assembly is not set up properly to direct that moisture to the drain, then it's just not like having drains at all. This is what happens when that moisture is trapped underneath a natural stone. We see ghosting, we see moisture stains, we see efflorescence. Freeze-thaw effects of that moisture being trapped also causes tile and stone to crack. And in most cases, an unsightly white efflorescence will come up through the joints to the surface of the talus finished surface. Here are more examples of moisture trapped in the assembly. There's a large investment in these type of installations. To have a finished look that's shown in these pictures would be devastating for a homeowner or a building owner after they spent a lot of money to have their dream exterior patio built. If you have an open joint installation and that water's trapped, then this is possible. Another unsightly situation. So none of those installations that we spoke about manage topside water intrusion from rain or snow. They don't reduce the risk of unsightly efflorescence. They don't minimize the risk of heaving and tenting from thermal expansion and freezing standing water. They don't allow the installation system to dry out evenly without permanent discoloration of the tile and grout. if you choose not to manage the water, be prepared to manage the maintenance. Again, another example of after the rain and then the sun driving that moisture to the surface right through the joints. When you have a proper capillary passive drainage system in place, along with a properly sloped substrate, there is no excess moisture that is driven to the surface. This is a picture of a capillary passive drainage mat under a mortar bed. The basic features of a drainage mat is comprised of a topside fleece that creates a defined space between the substrate and the covering, and the bottom side drainage channel that also offers load distribution. To increase the safety factor would to also include a drainage mortar. A drainage mortar is comprised of larger aggregates and a Portland cement that has hydrophobic properties. This is especially important when the substrate may not have great slope. A drainage mortar, which looks like a Rice Krispie square on your right, will not allow the water to wick back up through the assembly. So the topside water will drain through the drainage mortar much quicker than a traditional mortar, but it will not allow capillary activity or wicking of that water to work back up. A standard sand and cement screed is capillary active, which is on the left. A drainage mortar, on the other hand, is capillary passive. Again, allowing that moisture to pass through, but not wick back up through the assembly. The following picture is a good example of a capillary passive drainage system. You're going to have your substrate. You want to put down a waterproof membrane. What this does is it helps prevent any efflorescence that's maybe in that existing substrate from coming up through the assembly as well. Then you're going to have a loose laid drainage mat, a mud bed, which is your drainage screed, typically 2 inches in thickness, and then your porcelain tile or your natural stone. You incorporate a drain grate at all the doorways, and you have an option for either a drip edge profile and or a gutter system at the end of the balcony. There are a couple options for installing porcelain tile or natural stone over a drainage mat. Utilizing a drainage mortar on the left for balconies, terraces, roofs, or decks, we're going to use a porcelain tile or a natural stone. But again, that drainage mortar is going to be a minimum of 2 inches thick. So you must have enough space to accommodate this tile assembly on your deck or patio. The minimum height that you would need is 70 millimeters or 2.8 inches. Installing 2 cm porcelain pavers or 3 cm natural stone with a direct point adhesion method, or sometimes called a cement pedestal method, is the second option. You can also use this on balconies, terraces, and roof decks as well. You have to use porcelain pavers that are a minimum of 2 cm or natural stone that are a minimum of 3 cm to support the weight that's going to be on the direct adhesion of the pedestals. The minimum height is much less though, 30 millimeters or 1.2 inches. So let's take a closer look at these two systems. Again, you're going to have a waterproof membrane, your drainage mat, your drainage mortar, your porcelain tiles, or your natural stone. For the pedestal system, again, a waterproof membrane, your drainage mat, a medium bed mortar or large and heavy tile mortar, and 2 cm porcelain or 3 cm natural stone. Some of the benefits of these capillary passive drainage systems are they reduce the likelihood of efflorescence. They can accept a wide range of tile, pavers, or natural stone. They can accommodate a buildup to meet a threshold. They allow grout joints between the tiles. They shorten the drying times after rainfall, and they allow for fast drainage of the moisture or the water. When installing tile or stone on balconies, you may be faced with these issues. You have water drainage marks that run down the side of the balcony, possibly damaging further components of the balcony or even a neighbor's living space below. There are clean, attractive drip edge and gutter solutions to eliminate these type of problems. Here's an example of a completed install with a manufactured drip edge. For on-ground installations, a profile is used to protect the side of the drainage mat from the compaction of the soil. You want to keep those drainage mats open to allow that moisture to pass through. It's always a good practice to also put stones around the edge too to allow the moisture to drain properly away from the yard. Low thresholds or steps is critical on a patio or a deck. Water can seep into a house or a building with a low threshold, causing finished flooring damage, or even in some cases, mold that gets underneath the floor system. By installing a drain grate that is connected to the drainage mat, this alleviates this problem and gives an attractive finish. So, some basic aspects to consider when laying coverings on decks and terraces. The membranes and coverings should have sufficient fall of a minimum of 1% to 2%. You want to manage the seepage water with capillary passive drainage mat. You also must consider enough movement joints in the tile assembly. It's always important to choose the right adhesive at the right time. Take into consideration the geographical location of your installation when making your selections of mortars and grouts. Be sensitive to low thresholds in areas with heavy rain, snow, So to summarize, coverings on balconies and terraces are not waterproof. Seepage water is going to leak through. The backwater on the membrane or in the mud bed passes through the capillary system and the mud bed, the adhesive, the screed to the surface together with lime, resulting in efflorescence from frost damage and causing stains. Capillary passive drain mats create a space between the seepage water and the construction, so damages are prevented. The ventilation helps dry out the construction. If drainage systems are used, water must be able to rinse off the free edges. Profiles with drainage holes are recommended. Low thresholds bear the risk of water leaking into a room, leading to failures. Drain grates in front of doors and window channels channel the rainwater and prevent damage. Thank you, and I'll take any questions you may have.
Mark, great presentation. Appreciate it. Well done.
Sure.
Believe it or not, you did such a great job. We don't have any questions. We have one comment, and it was from someone who is very technical, and he said that nowhere in ANSI does it mention anti-fracture. It is crack isolation membrane. So there you go.
Okay.
Just for future. And other than that, it was very educational. We had a great audience. We had a lot of people here, and you did such a great job. There are no questions or anything that we really need to discuss. I want to thank everybody for attending. We had around 85 attendees. That's great. Fantastic. Got some comments coming in. Thank you for a great presentation, Mark. So you did well, and we appreciate it. And do you have any last words, Mark? Otherwise, we will say thank you to everybody.
No, thank you for everyone for taking time out of their day. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. And thank you. I want everyone to know our next webinar will be on February 4th. You'll be getting an invite shortly. Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.